Hello, I'm Colby Mazzarella. Welcome to Life Matters, where we interview guests who protect human life from conception to natural death. Today's guest is Jor-El Godsey, the president of Heartbeat International. He's here with us by phone, and welcome to our show, Jor-El.
Hi, Colby. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So you're the president of Heartbeat International, and tell me something about your group and its goals.
Well, Heartbeat International really came into existence, was called into existence by the pregnancy help efforts back even before Roe v. Wade was decided. We came into existence in 1971, and our whole goal really is to advance life-affirming pregnancy help around the globe. We have a guiding passion and believe that every woman should feel loved and supported during her pregnancy, and that no woman should feel so alone or coerced that she feels there is no other choice but to end the life of her baby. So Heartbeat is really all about helping encourage and equip and envision people for that kind of pregnancy help call to really touch those that are in that valley of decision about a pregnancy or a perceived pregnancy.
Well, let me ask you this. A lot of people might not know how much help is available for people with an unexpected, unintended pregnancy. What kind of help can someone ask or look for?
That's a great question. In our network of pregnancy health centers, they're really around the country and around the globe. There are compassionate people in nearly every community or close to nearly every community that are there to help. And usually in those situations, what someone wants or what they really need is to know that there are options. You know, the other side often talks about choice, but when they do that, they really only present one choice. And really the pregnancy health movement is all about helping the person understand all their choices and that there are really options. And so one of the ways that they can help personally is to bring maybe resources. Certainly it's a warm, compassionate voice and a friendly face and someone who really cares about them and is willing to not judge them but walk with them through a difficult decision. But they can also bring real resources. Some pregnancy help centers offer medical services. They're able to provide an ultrasound at no cost. In fact, none of the things that Pregnancy Center provides are really at any cost to the client. They can bring maybe material items such as even some will offer maternity clothes or diapers, or even as they have various items that the baby might need and or the mom would need, so that they can really kind of eliminate the reality of or what is perceived as a financial need. Some centers are able to help with costs or direct them to often programs that are ready and waiting to help these moms, but they don't necessarily know that they exist. Some things that the local government provides or the local hospital can do, or are extensions of, say, TANF monies or Medicaid, where these things are available, and many of our young people who are walking around really trying to understand what's going on in their pregnancy don't know about them, but they exist, and the centers are often experts on what's in their own community that can make things a lot easier for them to make a life-affirming decision.
So in different communities, there's centers with medical help, ultrasound, emotional help, actual objects like diapers and clothing and furniture. So how does somebody find out, someone who has these needs, they're pregnant, they feel like, I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with this, how do they contact someone who supplies all that support?
Well, great question. Oftentimes they're in the phone book, or which I know is not very common use for our younger set today, but they're available online. They have websites. They're trying to reach out. They're in the community, but they're often our best kept secret. And so it's one of our goals at Heartbeat is really to promote the local centers. We actually operate something called optionline.org, which is a 24/7, 365 call center that is designed to help people who are in that situation to find the kind of help that they need locally. And we do that. We have a number of phone calls. We interact with about 700 people every day across the nation. And we have about 85% of those are by phone, but also through text and chat and email, that we can help people find the local thing, that the local service that they need. Maybe they are looking for an ultrasound. Well, we know who in the area are providing ultrasounds, and not that everybody does. Maybe they need a referral for housing, or they might need maybe they're considering adoption, and we can help refer them to a community resource that is life-affirming in their area.
Well, that's pretty amazing. Is it some of them charged? I heard you say free, but are some of them for a cost?
No, all of our centers are really providing their services at no cost. They raise their funds from the community, from the folks that are in those areas. It's all grassroots efforts of people that are wanting to make sure that no one finds themselves in a situation where they feel like there's no other option. So they commit their resources so that someone that's in that situation looking for help gets it at no cost. In some states, sometimes the state actually helps with certain costs. But for the most part, these are local entities funded by local individuals who have a care and concern for those that are facing the very difficult decision regarding an unplanned or unintended pregnancy.
Are most of these crisis pregnancy centers staffed by volunteers? Is that how they can do it for free?
Yeah, well, that's one of the ways they do it at very low cost, is that most of the personnel power really comes through volunteering. Many centers operate with dozens, if not, maybe even as many as 100 volunteers, and both interacting with people in need and those in the background that are helping plan events and do various things. But they give their time. Most of the pregnancy help centers have at least one paid staff person, and in some cases that are larger and more developed have maybe several. But they do that with a cadre of volunteers who help keep costs low. In fact, we did a survey one time and found out that most centers operate with dozens of volunteers, that if you calculated all of their value for the year, it could run as high as $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year for all the volunteer hours if you were just paying them minimum wage, and of course they're worth much more than that. But they represent that kind of value to the community and certainly to those walking in the doors. That's
a lot of volunteering. What motivates someone to volunteer at all these crisis pregnancy centers?
Great question. There's a lot of discussion regarding the life issue and a lot of things that people can do. There, certainly we need to vote accordingly, according to that value. We need to make sure our elected officials are informed. But there are people that realize that we've been at this for 40-something years, and we continue to have this issue in our land, and so some people realize that while it's not being solved at the federal or state or local level, there are still people who wake up every morning who really can only envision one path out of the situation that they're in. In fact, statistics say that 3,000 women every day, that's the decision that they wake up with. And there are people who understand that there are women and men walking around facing this kind of situation, and it's that compassion, it's that heart to say, look, I can't fix the big issue, but I can help someone to feel like there at least are other options, that there are possibilities beyond the possibility of simply aborting their child or terminating their pregnancy. And they wake up with that very passion to say, what can I do? And they step into those situations. I'm amazed at that, Colby, that the people would find that. In some ways, I heard a speaker talk about even 9/11 and how there were people that were running and fleeing from those buildings, and yet there were first responders that were running to those buildings to rescue those that they could. And that's very much the heart that these individuals have, because they run to difficult situations that people who are facing an unplanned pregnancy find themselves in. Oftentimes it's described like a tornado, there's all these things swirling around them that they can barely see their way out of the situation, and what they really need is someone to run into the situation with them and walk with them through that, so that they understand clearly the things that they're anticipating, the things that they're investigating, and that they understand that there are possibilities that they might not see in that given moment. And that's what these passionate and compassionate people want to deliver. They want to deliver that understanding. And when we really recognize that we often can't see the forest for the trees, and this is a big tree and a big difficulty that they may be facing, but there are usually ways to address it. There are ways that can be found, that people will cling to, and then normally when they look back, they say, you know what I really needed? The things that I was given were good. The things that I was helped with, materially or practically are good. But what I really needed was someone to say, you know what, you can do this. This is something that you can do. And that's usually the key, that to have someone walk along with them that affirms them and affirms the life within them.
Well, so you're offering a lot of options to people, and I think option is in the name of your website?
Yes, optionline.org. That's one of the reasons why it's named that, because we want to make sure that the options are out there, that people that are looking for options will find us. We have a locator on our website, optionline.org, where people can go and they can type in their city or their zip code or their area and find the local centers nearby. It's a little map that pops up, and sometimes they don't even call us because they can find that local center themselves and then call that line directly or maybe be connected to their website. But if they call us, then we do the same thing. We'll call up the map, we'll ask them where they are, and then connect them based upon what they're asking for, because different services are at different locations. But what we know that is consistent amongst all the locations is that compassionate heart that's ready to help them. And so we connect them to that, and they can either find that through the website, optionline.org, or if they could just remember this simple number, 1-800-712-HELP, HELP, or 4357. So that's the way we get that message out. It's on billboards across the country. It's something that we do with our advertising to make sure that people know if they're looking for help, that they can find us, and we can help them find the ones that are close to them.
So 800-712-HELP, H-E-L-P.
Help, yes.
Great.
365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
That's very impressive. So you have volunteers able to answer in the middle of the night.
We do, except they're not volunteers. This is the commitment that Heartbeat makes, is that we pay our staff so that we can have consistent and trained services available in those wee hours, because those are very difficult times. We actually have many of them in our area, but we have several people across the country that answer at different times, whether it's at 2 in the morning or it's on our busiest day, which is actually Monday during the day is some of our busiest times. But whether it's in that wee hours of the night or it's during the business day, we want to be there to help them find that life-affirming help that's near them.
Well, when you say near you, how many pregnancy help centers are there in the whole country?
Okay, in the country, there are about 2,500, and we have
Wow.
our network on Optionline includes about 2,000 of them. So we're able to connect people to a very varied network around the country. They, of course, are going to be centered a lot well in the populated areas and a little more sparsely in the less populated areas. But they're in every state of the union. Some of them are newer. They've been open a few years, and some of them have been open for 30 or 40 years because they've been around for a long time.
Now, you said you also work in other countries. Tell me about that.
We do. I personally had the privilege to travel to several of them and meet the same kind of compassionate, loving people who are simply trying to help people who are in these situations. In some cases, we have affiliates that are in countries that you would know where they actually have to have a license to be pregnant, and if they have a second child, then that child is a potential target for a forced abortion. And we also work with people, and we help countries where abortion is illegal, and yet it still occurs. So some of these things, we work in 50 different countries around the globe and in different cultures. One thing that we find consistent in all of them is this concept of love, that we have a love for life, and that it's helping them value the lives of their little ones. Even when the system doesn't do that or the government doesn't do that, there's still the compassionate group of people that wants to help people find a way to give life to their little one.
Wow. So, of course, that's human nature, the parental instinct. But you have a lot of, in all those 50-plus countries, you have, tell me something how it compares the situation with pregnancy in other countries compared to here?
Sure. We find that statistically, we count, and the good news is the numbers have declined in the last couple of years. But annually in the U.S., there's about 1.1 million abortions in the U.S. on
a million
an annual
abortions.
Yes.
Just here.
So
yeah.
That's just in the U.S. And if you count since Roe v. Wade, they count somewhere between 56 and 58 million in over the span of those 42 now almost 43 years.
Just in the U.S.
But that's in the U.S. But in reality, in a single year, in the entire globe, there's more than 50 million abortions.
Wow.
And so the reality of the U.S., 97% of the abortions that are occurring in the globe happen outside of the U.S. So if we think that the issue is big in our country, we need to realize that in other parts of the globe, it is massive. And that's one of the things that Heartbeat International is trying to do, is to come alongside those that are feeling the same call as the folks that live down the street from us here in the U.S., but whether they're in South Africa or they're in Italy or they're in the Philippines or they're in Mexico, that they're feeling the same call to help women look for better options, look for a better way than abortion. And we firmly want to support them and be with them and help them to learn the things that we've learned in our journey as they wrestle with this, both as a country and as a culture. There's I have some amazing stories that come to mind about that, one of which is working with some folks that are in ex-Yugoslavian countries. And that region was kind of pulled together by a communist government, but in fact represents several different ethnic groups, and those ethnic groups haven't gotten along. And since the breakup of communism, there's been a lot of difficulty in those countries. And yet, underneath all of that is one group from one ethnic group is training another how to run a pregnancy center, so that the lives of loving the lives of those other babies from that other culture. And it's really a beautiful thing to see that, when you see the compassion and that heart that says, you know what, we want to share what we know so that you and your culture can continue and exist and flourish, as well as our culture. And it's those kind of beautiful understories that are happening that don't get told, don't get played out on the big screen, but are happening because more and more people are coming to this reality that, you know what, we can't wait for the governments to get it right, because they're just not. They haven't been doing it. It's not happening fast enough. And I pray that it does. But if it continues to delay, then we need more and more compassionate people stepping into these arenas and helping women and men recognize that there are better options. There are things that they should know and can know to help the life of their baby be born. And really, so that they can make a decision, frankly, that everyone can live with.
So how would you work in a country where abortion is required by law for a second child? Second pregnancy they require to be aborted?
Yes, that's difficult. So the idea of being overt and have a storefront where people can come in is not quite the same as in those countries. It happens more under the radar. It's something that is really drawing people to get counseling. They have to actually pursue people because they can't really do it overtly, so they do it more covertly. But there are ways. Sometimes a fine or a fee can be paid. There are potential for adoption or other agencies to come in and help. And so we know that it's difficult, but there are still people trying to make that happen.
Well, let me ask you, how did you get started yourself in pro-life work?
Well, I personally have a story myself about participating in an abortion when I was much younger and before I knew any better. That's what everybody did. And when I finally kind of understood the situation, when I was kind of really called to task to really understand the things that were going on in my own decision, I realized that what I had done was wrong, and I contributed to it. I take full responsibility for my part in contributing to that. And when I understood how I made that decision, I realized that the life of the unborn was just as important as my own, and I needed to do things to make sure that no one else felt like they had no other option. And that's when I found pregnancy health work myself. I volunteered at a local center. I did some things around the center and have was invited to be on their board. After a few years of doing that and watching that center grow, we were looking for a new staff member, and long story short, I became that staff person and entered into full-time service in this and have been doing it ever since. Now this is my 25th year of service in the pregnancy help community.
A quarter century. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about the name Heartbeat International.
Yes, originally we started out as Alternatives to Abortion International, and that was the original name of 1971, and because that really communicated alternatives to abortion. That's what we were really about. We didn't want people to feel like they had no alternatives. Over time, the organization kind of grew and morphed, and in 1993, our then president, Peggy Hartshorn, retitled it, renamed it Heartbeat International, named it after one of our newsletter titles from early on. And it really captures the spirit and the heart of both the volunteers and then, of course, the unborn who have a heartbeat. That's what we do, and that's what we want to communicate in that. That we are a network, really all about the heartbeat of life, this life-affirming goal to help people be able to make the choice for life.
Well, it sounds like you're making a big difference in really showing people their options. And I'll remind our audience again, the website is optionline.org, and the phone number is 800-712-HELP. That's 800-712-HELP if you need pregnancy help or you want to know your options. Now, what about someone who goes in really not sure, I don't know if I could possibly keep this baby, is this even realistically possible? How do they sort through that decision? Do you have support for that?
Well, that's the kind of the core of the conversation. Is we're trying to really find those that are in the valley of decision, that they're really questioning, and so we want to help and kind of open up the options to them when if they are not sure. In fact, we have plenty of people that leave our centers and they're not sure. And what we hope and what we hear from feedback from them, because we ask for exit interviews from all of our clients and our patients, is what we hear is 98% of them felt loved and appreciated and cared for, regardless of their decision or what they intended to do. And many times what will happen is they may leave our offices and without a clear direction, and it's not uncommon at all to 3 months later or maybe a year later or even many years later to have that person walk back through the doors and introduce us to the little one that actually was part and parcel of the outcome of a conversation that they had while they were at the pregnancy center, whether they saw their ultrasound or eventually they were able to find that footing to make that decision for life. And so we love on them then, and if they walked away and they've made another decision, maybe they went ahead with an abortion decision. That does happen, and while we find that difficult, we certainly want to love on those people as well, because everyone really should feel love and compassion, and we want to extend that to them. And we offer abortion recovery counseling and kind of a group setting or a one-on-one. Most of the centers will have that kind of thing available either in the center or through the center, and so they can connect people if they come to regret that decision, even if it's been many, many years ago, or even in some cases like mine, if it was someone that supported it. It was a father or even sometimes grandparents go through grieving regarding the loss of maybe what would have been their firstborn, or that first generation, then we have outreach available to them that comes in many different forms. But it's all about loving and carrying them to a place of healing that regret.
So even after abortion, you could call 800-712-HELP or optionline.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, at the Heartbeat International website, which is heartbeatinternational.org, we have something called 10 things you can say or do to make abortion unwanted today and unthinkable for future generations. Free download. It's easy to find on our website, and it really covers several areas, several simple things that people can do to show love and compassion for someone that's facing an issue. One of which is what you've done is help promote the 712 help number. That's important, but also have some ready answers when we're engaging people in our own spheres of influence, whether it's a neighbor, maybe a neighbor's experiencing, maybe their daughter or son is in the midst of a crisis pregnancy or an unplanned pregnancy. Whether it's walking with some simple things of helping them understand that there are options, that they can learn. We really should learn about the situation and then really maybe represent a new vision and value to them, and then extend and empower them to make a life-affirming decision.
Well, we're just about out of time. Maybe you have a quick sentence or two about how our audience could help Heartbeat International.
Well, the biggest thing is pray. This is a big issue, but find your local center. Go to optionline.org, find your local center, and connect, or find us on the web, heartbeatinternational.org, and we'd be glad to help direct and answer any questions that we could. We want to help activate and motivate people to advance life-affirming pregnancy health around the globe.
Well, thank you very much, Jor-El Godsey, for being on our show, giving us a lot of good information today.
Thank you, Colby. I very much appreciate it.
And thank you, too, for listening, and see you next week on Life Matters.